LaxFactor podcast. What is up, college lacrosse fans? You're watching another episode of the LaxFactor Lacrosse podcast. It is episode number 177. In today's episode, we are going to talk about fall ball action. We're going to talk about Syracuse and Ohio State facing off. Syracuse also played Yale a couple weekends ago. We're going to talk Lehigh and UVA. Virginia played Lehigh at their place a couple weeks ago. Hopkins, Hobart, and Richmond all had a three-way scrimmage. We'll talk a little bit about that and then some players from all of those games as well. Before I get into it, as always, you can go to LaxFactor.com. Support us that way. Get yourself some swag, t-shirt, hats, whatever, but more than anything else, just subscribe. If you're watching this video on YouTube, just subscribe. If you're listening to the audio version of this, share it with your friends. Subscribe to the channel, like the video. If you're watching the video on YouTube again, just like it blindly. And as always, now we're announcing to everybody, if you are a Spotify person, or if you're not, you dislike YouTube, you can now also watch the video version of the podcast on Spotify. We put the video version out on YouTube, Facebook, and now Spotify as well. But, you know, you can watch it on Spotify and you can switch between listening and watching if you don't want to see my ugly mug. So let's get into it first. Syracuse and Ohio State. I may have touched on this briefly. There wasn't a whole lot of news coming out of Syracuse on this. So everything I've kind of gleaned from this, I've grabbed from message boards and just a couple of people that I know, you know, kind of were in the know a little bit. Syracuse overall, I've been kind of down, being afraid of what they were going to look like defensively, but I kind of have a semi non-official but official look at their roster, which I'm not going to go deep into yet. I'll wait until I do the official preview. But really, granted, we lost 3 All-American players. They lost Porter in cage, they lost Trimboli at midfield, and they lost Rafis at attack. And then they lost some other key guys here and there. But from a defensive perspective, outside of Porter, they bring pretty much all of the main contributors back. So they lose Dearth, but you know that he was big, and losing him is going to hurt. But hopefully, some of these young D mids that I don't think performed well. I thought Syracuse was weak at defensive mid last year. Beyond Dearth, maybe you know those guys were all young freshmen and sophomores, and maybe some of them will be a little bit better, and then that will add a little bit more depth, hopefully, to the defensive midfield. Anyway. From what I hear, Syracuse handled their business against Ohio State, 3-5 goal margin. I may have reported that last week is what I've heard, but that's unofficial. So the rumors are that Tucker Dordevic will see time at attack. I think I mentioned that briefly as well. There was a picture of him dodging from X that got people all sorts of excited, making them believe that that was evidence that he was going to run some attack. That could be, and I don't know what they were basing that off of, if maybe the guy that was guarding him was a close defender for Ohio State, and maybe that's why they were like, hey, that's evidence that Dordevic's at attack. But Dordevic or Curry or any of those guys running from X does not mean they're playing attack in that moment, at least. I think more than likely you're going to see it mix up a little bit. I think you're going to see them probably run him at attack at times, depending on matchups, maybe a little bit every game just to keep him on the field more often. But I think that you'll still see him come down and run a little bit of mid as well. Buttermore apparently was hurt. He's been battling injuries pretty much his whole career, Buttermore has. So I hope he gets better because he's going to be badly needed at that midfield to try to replace some of Trimboli's production. So overall, Ohio State supposedly also looked very good. They're also replacing some All-American talent that they have lost, but they apparently, both teams did battle, looked good. It was a very clean scrimmage considering it was the fall. Almost nothing came out about the Syracuse-Yale scrimmage that supposedly happened, but so little came out about it. I'm not even sure if they played at all. So we'll see as time goes on what happens with that. But moral of the story, Syracuse supposedly looked really good on offense. Defensively, I didn't hear a lot about, but you don't hear a whole lot on games that don't get covered by the official media on the defensive side because everybody, you know, not everybody's an expert and people are just watching people score goals. So that was it on that Syracuse scrimmage. Now, we also have Lehigh and UVA from a couple of weeks ago. This was played to bring awareness to the opioid crisis with proceeds going to the American Boy Project. Sisselberger versus LaSalla was one thing I was excited. I watched the highlights from, I think it was Lax.com, put the highlights up for these as well. Sisselberger and LaSalla. I'm not sure how it went overall. In one of the highlight clips, though, Petey fucking LaSalla definitely scored a goal off one of the draws, so that's always good. And once again, as I always say with LaSalla, he may not win 75-80% of the draws, but he's good for a point or two a game, so that's always key for him. Sisselberger, one of the best face-off guys to do it. You know, you wonder if by the end of his career he'll have, you know, these final. I think he's got 2 seasons left now under his that he'll get to put in here. So I'm curious to see how he ends up doing over these last 2 years. Is he going to be that guy that wins 70+% And can he try to start breaking records and crap like that? Because he's a highly heralded face-off guy. And now he's got, I believe, 2 years under his belt at Lehigh. Lots of highlights, though, from the usual suspects in this one. Matt Moore, Schellenberger, Cormier, they all factored, all scored goals. Cormier, I saw score one off a dead ball. I saw Schellenberger stick one off a crazy dodge. Saw some decent defense out of Lehigh's shorties, actually. One of them D'ing up Schellenberger pretty well. Once again, the story for Virginia, at least for me, we know how all these other guys are going to do. It's who's going to fill the voids that are lost, by guys like Dox Aitken and crap like that at the midfield. And once again, Xander Dixon looked like he may have gotten time at attack as well and at midfield. I suspect that he'll play mostly midfield during the regular season with some time at attack here and there, just spelling the other three guys, maybe trying to mix it up. And because all three of the Virginia attackmen have all been midfielders for Virginia at one point. Moore was a midfielder, 2 or 3 years ago. Cormier played a little bit of midfield over the last 2 seasons, and Schellenberger played a little bit of midfield last year. So you may see them kind of use that 4-man rotation, and that will keep Dixon on the field because Dixon has looked good. And once again, scoring at least 2 goals in this Lehigh scrimmage that I saw from the highlight reel. I don't know what the official score of this one was. Looked like 4 to 7 goals or so by Virginia, just based off of the Virginia look to score more goals than Lehigh did. But Lehigh's a quality team, always plays the Cavs tough when they meet. The next scrimmage I wanted to talk about, Johns Hopkins played Hobart and Richmond. Now, Hopkins looked very good offensively overall, and I got to see some highlights for this one as well and read quite a bit about it because this was well covered, being in Baltimore, easy to get to. Overall, from what I'm hearing, via the normal internet chatter, they played really well offensively. In the highlight cut, you could see that Epstein looked good. DeSimone looked good. Thanks to John Grant Jr. with this offense. Overall, they supposedly look good. One of the problems for Hopkins last year was they didn't create a lot of offense from the midfield. That's not to say midfielders didn't put points up, but if you watch those games, they had a hard time dodging and getting separation and kind of running that offense through the midfield at times, and that kind of just left the attack to be the main contributor, the main creators of offense for Hopkins. And then, you had Epstein struggling a little bit last year. So overall, they just did not gel well. So hopefully John Grant Jr. can turn that around. Unofficially beat up Hobart 18-9 in the first scrimmage. DeSimone, he looked good. Epstein scored a couple of goals early. He looked good in that. Hopkins overall shared the ball well, mixed it up in transition. I even saw Pohl score a goal at one point. And Epstein played well from the point in transition as well. Richmond, it was a much tighter game, 11-8 unofficially. That score could have gone a goal either way. They weren't sure. They beat each other up a little bit. That game was a little bit more choppy, a little bit more sloppy overall. Word is that Richmond looked very good, but Hopkins once again showed well. And Hopkins was apparently fairly beat up, didn't have everybody playing. And, you just with the adversity they've had, new coach, trying to get acclimated to, what's going on now. It's been a tough deal, tough road for Hopkins the last couple of years, a very tough road for Hopkins fans, but all accounts say that the Hop faithful should have a lot to look forward to in 2022. We knew they were going to bounce back and that they were going to end up being okay. It was just a matter of trying to figure things out and then get that offense clicking, because the offense carried them through the 2019, through those years where before they really started tanking. The defense was what was really the big problem. And offensively, they were still a pretty exciting team to watch. Last season was not that same thing. Last season, they struggled offensively for sure. One thing I did read, and I didn't really get to see this with my own eyes all that much, was that Ryan Archer for Hobart looks really good. And we're talking potentially the best player on the field good. Kind of a la Ryan Tierney last year. Tierney put up a ton of points. I expect Archer's going to put up a ton of points for Hobart. Anyone that follows Hobart, me being an upstate guy and the fact they play Syracuse, I always end up seeing these Hobart guys that do well, and I always catch at least a few of their games overall during the season because I can always find one streaming somewhere. So Archer has always been very good, but apparently he's going to take that next step to greatness here this season, and he looked insanely good, maybe the best player on the field. And we'll see. Dude can score the rock, though, that's for damn sure. Harvard against High Point. Now, Asher Nolting, he was a force. If you watch the highlight cut, he had just a bunch of assists, and he made it look really easy. He had a goal and somewhere around 7 helpers in the game. 3 of those all were early to Braden Maia, where right off the bat, I think it was High Point's first 3 goals were Nolting to Maia, and it just looked too easy. Nolting would half dodge, just have his head up, hit Maia, who just would happen to be open all over the field, and he'd score goals. Maia scores every way imaginable. Did that? I don't know. Did that make sense? My mustache is itching my nose here today. He scored underhanded, backhanded. He scored on the crease. He scored, kind of dodging up, getting a feed and dodging up the right side. Maia is going to be very dynamic with Nolting, but Nolting straight up just looks filthy. Nolting looks filthy. IL, whoever wrote the fall ball right up here for that, called him a cheat code. And if you watch the highlight cuts, you'd have to agree. He just made it look easy, almost as if, though, the defense was just really that bad, especially the off-ball defense. But when he did want to score a goal, and the one goal that I did see him score, just inside rolled, came up high on the wing on the right side with a stick in his right hand, inside rolled him underneath, and just came in, stuck one right on the crease. He made it look way too easy. Now, on Harvard's side, they apparently edged High Point out 15-13. Which should be a very good sign for not just the Ivy League, but for Harvard specifically in terms of how they'll fare after not playing for so long. Isaiah Dawson, former number 1 recruit, he scored a goal. I think he had a goal and an assist if they gave him an assist for one of his alley dodges where he fed an attackman from behind. The kid came up and scored. So he looked good, looked big too. So I think he'll factor for him. Story of the day, though, for Harvard anyway, was Sam King, freshman out of Gilman, Under Armour All-American. He played like a big boy on the day, despite his freshman status. Put up somewhere in the area of 5 goals and a helper against High Point. Very good output for King on the day. Showed a knack for finishing both with the ball, off ball, scrapped, scored a goal dodging from X. I think his first 2 goals were him dodging from X that I saw. Scored a backhand off kind of an odd scuffle, dodge, jump shot off a quick feed coming up the right alley, kind of coming up from GLE, caught it, shot it on the run. Got his hips turned and put it in. I mean, that kid looked like the real deal in the scrimmage. Now, granted, it is the fall, but he looked like a stud on the field. And I only got to see like a 4-minute clip, and everything that he did that they showed looked really good. But obviously, we're seeing him score goals. So, but Dawson, don't front on him either. He's big, look good. He could be the real deal for the Crimson as well. So beyond that, what do we have to look forward to here in lacrosse world? We got the NLL. They're about to get fired up. We're going to try to cover that a little bit as we do team previews and things like that. So we'll try to mix up a little bit of NLL news while we talk about the college game and all that stuff. But once again, it's a slow news cycle here right now. We now that we're past COVID, last year was one of the most frenzied off seasons in college lacrosse, I think, because we were all really jonesing. So it was really easy to just pick, browse the internet quick and find a million things to talk about because everybody was chirping. This year it has been a much quieter fall. So we're still going to fudge it together every week. We're going to put together some kind of fall report mixed with a little bit of pro coverage and a little bit of sixes coverage because like I said, I'm a little bit more into the sixes now. I haven't watched the full games. I think it was the Lacrosse Network put the full sixes games up from last weekend or the weekend before. So I'm going to watch those full games next and really get a feel for how that flowed. And maybe next week we'll talk about that a little bit more once I dissect them. But that's pretty much it. I'm not going to ramble any longer. We'll just keep doing short shows until we have more to talk about and we can get back to the 30-minute format. So that is it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, all that crap. Share this with your friends. You can go to LaxFactor.com, get yourself some swag, t-shirts, hats, and all that crap. I will be back next Sunday morning with another episode. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And Hoost is out.